Well, hello everybody, welcome back to another pastel video. I hope you guys have all been enjoying your Christmas and are looking forward to New Year. And for those of you that have not celebrated any festivals this year, or at least at this time of year, that you are sitting back and relaxing and enjoying. We've had some pretty awful weather here in the Highlands, resulting in some interesting flooding. Thankfully we haven't been affected, but I can't say the same for our poor neighbours, unfortunately. But hey ho, this is what brings us in our area in Scotland. The weather has been all over the place. We have not yet been hit by snow where I am, but it is not that far off, only a couple of miles further north of us, so not that far. We are expecting snow where I am, hopefully next weekish. So yes, we'll see what happens then and whether I'm having to dig my way out to the bus stop to get the buses into work. I'm still doing panto or pantomime for those that don't know what that is. A pantomime is British comedy play suitable for families with a lot of slapstick comedy, a lot of fart jokes, a lot of messing around and falling over each other, and a lot of audience interaction with regular one-lines like "he's behind you," and then characters interacting with the audience with "oh no he's not," and the audience saying "oh yes he is," and back and forth for a while, just to kind of keep that interaction between the audience and the performers on stage. And this year we are doing Aladdin, and we are now on performance 38, or at least performance 38 was this afternoon's matinee. A matinee is an early afternoon show, and then there is an evening show at 7 p.m. So that will be show number 39, and then that leaves us 4 more shows to go until the end of the end of this year's pantomime. So yeah, 42 shows. It feels like a lifetime ago that we started it. I can't wait for it to finish in some respects, but yeah, it'll be another year before we start our next one, and I am not telling you what it is. Right, so what you're seeing here is my board, and as you can see, it's looking a little bit grotty at the moment. What I am going to show you is some pre-prep for some abstract landscape pieces that I'm going to be doing, and we are going to do this on non-sanded paper, which we are going to give some texture in order to be able to work on. We are going to use a mixture of texture paste, river sand, which I get locally, and some gesso. Plus we're going to tint it with a little bit of printing ink, just because it has that slightly stickier texture and adheres better to the sand and stuff that I'm using. I'm just going to give it a slight grey tone in order to give the paper some tone. The paper we are using is a 320 gram Bristol water. Bristol watercolour? It's definitely a watercolour paper, really thick, beautiful texture paper, but it means it's going to be able to take the texture solution really well and allow me to be able to create a, not sanded, well I suppose it is sanded, isn't it? Sanded surface, seeing as I'm using sand. But the texture paste will also give us a bit more in the way of lines from the brush stroke of the brush that I'm applying it with. I've got other bits and pieces here that I can use to give it slightly different textures as well. So we're going to see how this goes. It should be interesting. First thing I am going to do is clean my backing board. This board is a piece of ply, hardwood ply, so it's quite weighty, sitting on my easel. It has been painted in kind of off-white cream coloured silk emulsion paint, so it's got a little bit of waterproofing to it. I can spray it lightly and wipe it down, which makes it a great working surface, and it was just to protect the wooden board, to stop that absorbing loads of things and water when I'm working. And I made this board myself. I just went to the DIY hardware store, B&Q for those of you in the UK that are in the know, and this works really well for what I do. It's pretty big. Trying to work out, what is it, about 4 foot by 3 foot, so it's significantly big. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it down. I have some, ignore what's in the bottle, But this is just a bottle of water and some washing up liquid, fairy liquid for those that know. It is in an old Method bottle, but I reuse anything I can find, so might as well. Just gonna give this a light spray. I've just got some kitchen towel. It doesn't matter if you're smearing stuff around, it's just giving it like once over. To be honest, it just takes off the worst of the dust, because that's what tends to get on and ruin other surfaces. Ooh, look at that. Another spray. Probably a huge amount of cat fur stuck to this board as well, but you know, if you've got cats and you allow them into your studio space, you know what I mean. No matter what you do, it gets everywhere. Right. For the OCD people, that is as clean as this board is going to get. There is absolutely no point cleaning this board consistently in any way whatsoever. You really don't want to be honest. But the idea is that I can kind of, yeah, it's clean enough for what I'm going to be doing, which is working on it. So we have got our paper. This is it here. I'm going to bring it a bit closer. I don't know how well it will show you, but it has got a slight kind of watercolourish texture, which is kind of what you expect. So you can see how thick it really is. It's really lovely. And as you might have seen from my initial photo, our standard roll of masking tape. So what I usually do is I start off by putting a little bit of a masking tape on each corner, and that just helps me line the board up. Admittedly, usually I work with paper that's a bit smaller unless I'm doing big animal work, which I'm hoping to maybe do some videos on this year. I know some of you have seen some of my time-lapse videos, so you know I do animals. I just haven't videoed any. But I thought it might be nice to actually show you guys some of those this year. If you have any thoughts or anything that you'd like to see, just let me know. So, just try and make sure I can keep you in camera. Right. So I've gone for the less grained side. That's grainier than this side. Try and keep it straight as well, at least as straight as I'm going to get it. The problem with being partially sighted is I'm never really sure if I'm getting anything straight, let alone where I'm supposed to be putting it. I'm just running my fingernail in along the edge, and that just helps secure the paper firmly at the top, just because you don't want it to slip. Problem is, if you leave the air gap there, the paper can move. Right, so hopefully you can see, yeah, there you go, you can see all of that, great. So here is our piece. Now I'm going to be splitting this into 4 and doing 4 abstract landscapes, and then I'll be trimming that back and showing you what they look like individually. But to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use the masking tape just to mask off this piece of paper into 4 sections. So what I want to do is do a rough middle. I'm not one for getting the measuring tape out and marking exactly where the middle of this piece of paper is, because that just would drive me nuts. So I don't really care, I'm just going to make this up. So now I am going to do a double row, because when I cut these pieces out, I want to be able to make sure I've got enough white border around each piece for later framing. So this piece will not be the middle, it will be one side of the middle. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, no idea if this is going to be straight, but never mind. That's definitely not straight. And yes, I'm well aware there are definitely tools for making things straight, but I am just not fond of them. I kind of like the organic way, shall we say. That's a bit better. I think it needs to move a little bit over. Right, that'll do. So there's our first piece down. This is our second piece, which we're gonna also put here. I'm just gonna overlap them. It just makes it easier for taking up later. Yeah, those two sides are not even at all, but never mind, it won't matter. Sometimes people worry too much about making a painting the size they need because they spend all their time focusing on, oh, I want to frame this in a, I don't know, 10 inch by 10 inch or 5 inch by 5 inch or an 8 by 10 or a 12 by 16 frame, or, and you're just like, really? That actually limits your work when you start having to think like that. What you need to do is focus on your piece and then work on what element of that piece do you want in your picture frame. So I tend to always work larger than what I'm probably going to frame it as. Then that way, when I've got the frame, I can move it around and judge how much of each side of the painting I actually want. It means you can also edit out mistakes, gaps, scratches, anything that was underneath the paper that suddenly showed through. Defects in the paper is another good one. So it's good for a couple of different reasons. Right, so we're going to do the crossways. Same thing, we need to do a double stripe. So probably there. Oh, that's on a slope and a half, isn't it? And there. Right. So there's our middle. We've now got 4 sections. Now I want to tape top and side edges, top, bottom, sides, edges, and that's just so that I've got a white border for finishing, and that's so that when I take the tape off I can get a clear image of what the piece will kind of end up looking like before I frame it. To be fair, and going back to that whole point of people that obsess with ensuring that their work is framed, you don't actually need to do that. Also, don't do that border. No, you're not wide enough. You know, a lot of the pieces I sell unframed. I just sell the backing board and 50mm 2-inch mount, just so that people can enjoy the painting when they receive it, but then it's up to them how they want to actually frame it. So, and yeah, you don't want to. The problem is everyone's got their own taste in frames, and you know, it kind of depends on the decoration of the room and where they're going to put it, what else they're putting up on the wall with it, you know, whether or not they're gifting it to somebody. So you can't account for somebody else's taste. You can use a frame to make a painting look even better than it is by having a frame that complements the painting, and that's great for maybe selling purposes. But then I wouldn't sell the frame with the painting. I would still sell the painting as unframed, and I would then reuse that frame for another painting to make the next painting look good for selling. But I wouldn't certainly sell a painting with a frame unless very specifically requested. It's very unusual that I would actually ever do that. Also, there's a huge risk when it comes to selling frame paintings in transit, breakages, which then leads to disappointment when your client receives it at the other end, and also in cost of delivery. You know, selling a painting, I use glassine paper and then roll it and tube it. That's usually for the bigger ones, that's usually the best way of sending them. If you have it framed, then you have to have special packaging, protection, insurance, everything else that goes with it, and it becomes so expensive to then ship a painting. You then have to factor that in to your selling price, which then could potentially put clients off. So that's something you need to think about when you're thinking about selling your work. Okay, right, on the sides. So this is looking like these are going to be about 10 inch by 8 inch. It's an A2 piece of watercolour board, so I'm not really surprised on the size wise on how that's come out, but quite happy with that actually. It does mean if you're doing it this way around, obviously you cannot do a mixture of portrait and landscape paintings unless you want some much smaller ones. For example, I can break one of these down with a tape line, and then I've got 2 portrait ones, but in this case I'm quite happy with these 4 landscape. Right, so now we have our board and our paper and everything taped out. What we're now going to do is work on creating this really nice textured surface to work on. Let's see if I can show you. This is going to be pretty difficult to show. So this is just a tub. As you can see by all the bits in it, this is just river sand. So let me just show you. So you can see it is super, super fine. I don't know if you can just about see it on my fingertips there, is how fine it is. It's lovely. I love river sand. So what I'm going to do is I have plate, brush, important things, and also on the table we have my Liquitex gesso, which has a fine, really fine texture. If I didn't want to use river sand, which is quite coarse, even though it's fine, it is still coarse, I probably would use pumice powder as another really good one for a lot finer. I've also got some linoprint ink from Schmick, which is our college one. This is black, just using this to tint. And then for added additional texture, we have the Daler-Rolley texture paste, which is really great, really thick. So I'm just gonna dump some of this on the plate, and then we will get mixing. A fair bit of the texture paste on this one. Gesso's quite runny, so in fact you can probably hear it. Yeah. Assuming I can get into it because the lid's stuck again. Try not to get it everywhere. Very, very tiny amount of my black. Right. And then what I'm going to do is just a pinch. Actually, I'm just going to 2 pinches. 2 pinches of the sand. So, that's kind of what it looks like at the moment. So I'll bring it closer, should be able to see the sand properly. Right, I'm just going to mix this together. There's also cat hair in here already. Why am I not surprised? Probably going to need to add so you can see how thick it is with the texture paste. It is literally like dollop, but that is, I will water this down a little bit but not too much because you do want that beautiful texture. Adding some more of the black, just because I want a bit more of a grey colour. Remember, if you are toning or tinting anything to use and to tone paper or card, use small amounts. The number of people that I've seen just do a huge dollop and then spend ages adding white to kind of bring it back down again, and then you end up messing up your consistencies. So that's great. Add some water and a bit more sand. Should be able to see see how grainy that is. Bring it close, see. I think if I do that, and I hold it right up, should be able to see that. Yeah, hopefully you can see that. Right. Good to go. Some sort of floral scent in the washing up liquid that I've used in the water, and that's the water I am using, in case anyone wonders, to also thin this down. So now my ground paste here smells amazing. I'm pretty sure that's not a requisite for artists, but hey, I often will have a scented candle running in the background. Oh, you can hear that? Yeah, that's the sand. Right, so you might be able to hear that on the camera. It's yeah, definitely making an interesting noise. I can also see bits of it as well, which is great because that's what I want. I want that texture. Now, if you're making your own ground, I do suggest don't add too much water. I know it looks like you're going to use loads, and you can use it quite sparingly on the paper, but the more water you add, seeing as you're not using pastel paper, which often, apart from some like the Smellier, can quite happily take water, you may cause your paper to warp after the ground has dried, which, yeah, you have to be very careful of. So, there's one. Oh, now I'm getting it everywhere. Look at that. That's why I use bigger boards. I'm so messy when it comes to painting. And that, folks, is why you don't see me doing loads of painting. This will lighten as it dries, because I'm not too worried. I also wanted mid-tone so I can work on, because I want to create some nice contrast in the painting, so that's often easier to do if you've already started with a mid to dark tone piece of paper. Twig. That's no problem with a river. Is sometimes you have added bonus dirt, shall we say, twigs, branches, and of course my personal favourite, cat hair. Cat hair actually adds a really nice texture, by the way. I don't recommend obviously stripping your cats of their hair, but if you do want some interesting textures when you're doing landscape or painting work the way you want texture, actually just general fluff from around the home can be really quite useful. And just add it to a ground like gesso and apply it to a surface, and actually when you then run pastel over it, you get some really beautiful textures. So this is going on really nicely, and I can kind of see, you can kind of hear it. As the first one is pretty much almost dry, what I'll probably do is go over it the other direction. So obviously I've done side to side, there's that cat here again, on all of these. And I'm just going to do a light coat up and down. And what that will do is make sure that I've got texture going in both directions. What you don't want is texture only in one, well, unless you want to have texture in one direction. Now, if you're doing landscapes, and I do this sometimes when I'm doing this process, weirdly enough, is I will do it only in one direction. So if I'm doing a landscape, i.e. this direction, I'll often do my texture ground only in that direction, because it actually helps draw the eye along the paper and along the line of the painting. However, in most cases, and in order to maximise the number of layers I want to put down, then I'm going to do what I'm doing here, which is to ensure that I've got texture going in both directions. This one isn't quite as dry. I'm going to lay it over anyway, because I'm a little pushed for time. And I'll see if I can get a close-up of the paper later so that you can see the difference between the actual paper and what I've got down. And then you can see a close-up of the texture that I've actually created with this paste. It's so weird because you can see the grains of sand, but you can also see the brush strokes. The drier the brush you're using, the better the texture of the brush strokes, if you want texture of brush strokes. Now, you won't be able to see it in the camera, but I can certainly see it as I'm painting this on, that the moisture has soaked into the card and it is bowing out. So if I do that, you can kind of see it bouncing, but that's fine. It will re-flatten out as it dries, so I'm not too fussed. If you are painting, if you are going to do something like this and create your own surfaces, use a light hand, do not push with the brush. You are literally just applying the ground to the paper and just lightly. Right, that is all of them done. I'm going to wash the brush off, and then when it's dry I will give you all a close-up shot so you can see the texture, and then hopefully I will see you all when you join me to do some abstract landscape paintings. In the meantime, ta-ta for now.